Alright guys, I have done other videos on the replacement of electrolytic capacitors, so I'm not going to really go into this in too much detail. Essentially I'm going to be using the same method to desolder the caps. I do have a desoldering gun, which is pretty awesome. It's a soldering iron with a nozzle and a tube, and it actually has a, I guess it would be an air compressor. It would be pulling the air out and pulling the solder out. I'll actually show you that later. I'm going to do some repairs on that, and I might film doing repairs on a desoldering iron. But since that one's not, it's kind of out of commission right now, we're just going to be doing it the standard way. And if you can see my solder station, you definitely want to be more organized than me, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and see if I can get the process on film. Okay. So this is the board that we're working with. The main capacitors that we need to remove are these 4 up here, as well as these 2 on the bottom. So essentially what I like to do first, and of course I don't have a pen, here's one right here. What I like to do first, and of course my light's going to go out, give me 1 second. I'm actually using a drawing board similar to what you'd probably see at like a tattoo parlor or something like that. See right here, to do my lighting, so while I desolder. What I like to do first is trace the leads to the bottom of the board and circle them, so I can get an idea. Say if I misplace the capacitor when I actually remove it, I know exactly where it goes in. So these 2 capacitors here are going to be right here. So what I'll do is I'll actually circle the bottom of the capacitors. Another thing I like to do is see exactly what type of capacitor we're looking at, what type of microfarads, what voltage. So this is a pretty common capacitor right here. Both of them are 1500 microfarads and 16 volts. So that's actually really standard. So I should have those capacitors in stock and be able to replace them no problem. So what I like to do is actually write that on the bottom where I circled the leads, so I can also use that as a reference later. So we're looking at 1500 microfarads at 16 volts. So I'll just write 1500 lowercase u, uppercase f, at 16V for 16 volts. So I'll write that down there, and that gives me that reference to get remove those. So we have 3, looks like probably identical capacitors here as well, and they are 1000 microfarads at 35 volts. That one's actually a little bit more uncommon. I'll have to see if I can find something that's the same or very, very close to it. Essentially, when it comes to capacitors, what you can do, as long as you get the same microfarads, you can have a greater voltage. That should be okay, as long as it fits and it's the same footprint and it can actually fit in the same holes and not take up any more space or be any taller or so forth. We want to match this size as much as we can. But say if we can only find 1000 microfarads at 60 volts, which is probably uncommon anyways, but let's say that's all we got, but it's the same size, that should be okay because it's programmed to reach that specific voltage and stop anyway, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. The only thing we want to worry about is the microfarads. We want to make sure that we're getting very close or just exactly what we're looking at right now. Generally, I don't like teetering out of any range for the microfarads, but I know there's a lot of people out there that say you can do slightly higher or slightly less. I imagine slightly higher would probably be the better option, but generally I like to stay specifically what it is as what it is. So with this, we just want to circle the leads. We got 1, 2, and 3, and these are 1000 microfarads at 35 volts. I think that's what I said. Yep. And then we have the small, and these are caps on capacitors. They look like cheap capacitors. This one is 35 volts at 220 microfarads, 35 volts on the small one right here. So I want to circle that. So we have 22 zeros, so 220 microfarads at 35 volts. Okay, so I'm going to desolder those, and we are going to replace them. Okay, so desoldering is very easy. With this, using probably lead-based solder is going to be easy. We're going to be able to get in there and just remove it. I have done videos or a video on this in the past. If you want to use that as a reference, I might not get too specific with how we're going to remove these, but I'll try to show you as much as I can. So essentially, what we do is we trace the leads back, and we want to hold a soldering iron on that lead, the bottom lead, until it solidifies that solder, desolidifies, and then we kind of pull it up. And sometimes we have to, no, yep, that one's going to work. So we hold it on the lead and then we pull it up, and this is the seesaw method, is what I reference it as, because essentially you're kind of going back and forth with the leads. The bad thing about doing this is sometimes it can be tough on the PCB, and it can actually pull out the solder mask, and that's kind of the last thing that you want to do. So just keep that in mind when you're actually desoldering these capacitors. Sometimes it can actually damage the PCB, or it can hurt the leads around it, depending on how high you have your soldering iron set at. Right now mine is set at 400 degrees, and that should be okay. That's 400 Celsius. That might be a little high, but let me see, we actually get this one removed by doing that. And actually see, I'm sorry about this camera. Should have got my better camera out for this one, but so what we're going to do is essentially that just all around the board, and I'll probably just go ahead and fast forward it through the rest of it here. So. Alright, so we got all those capacitors out. So you can see now, sorry about the focusing issue, now we have all these empty sockets here. Empty as well. And also with this, I didn't touch on this, but I did touch on it in my other capacitor replacement video, is how to align the capacitors, because you're going to have a negative and a positive lead, just kind of like a battery essentially. So each one of these legs is going to represent either negative or positive. Usually with this one right here, the white stripe is representing negative, so we're wanting to align that to the board. The board will change depending on what type of board you're working on. With this one, you probably can't see, but there's a thick, dark line on the circle next to one of the holes. That thick, dark line represents that the negative lead needs to be lined up with that. Sometimes that's the opposite, depends on what type of board you're working on though. But okay, so we got those capacitors out, and that was actually fairly easy to remove those capacitors. Do keep in mind to be really gentle when removing those, because a lot of the TV power supplies and different power supplies like this, the printed circuit board is fairly easily scratched, and if that happens, sometimes you can cut leads underneath the actual solder mask there, and that's not a good thing. So, but anyways, we're going to find some capacitors and we're going to replace them. Alright guys, so we actually got the capacitors replaced. Excuse me, I pretty much did a no-no though. In all reality, I don't have all the exact capacitors that I need. I had the 1500 16 volts, those are pretty common. I had the 2200 microfarad 35 volt, and I had two of the 1000 farad microfarad 35 volt, and I didn't have a third one. So you'll see the two big blue ones there, and then the black one on top of it. Black one on top of it's a 25 volt. So I'm not expecting this to work. I'm not expecting this to be a stable TV. What I'm wanting it to do right now is to prove to me that the capacitors were the issue. So if it blinks on and it works for a little bit, that tells me that the capacitors were the main problem, and then I'll go ahead and order another replacement capacitor. Or in reality, what I'll probably do is we'll look up on eBay. I bet there is a capacitor replacement kit specifically for this power supply for like 15, 20 bucks or something like that, which sends you all the capacitors to replace on the board, even ones that probably aren't swollen. So, which means that you get a a nice fresh installation of everything, which makes things work pretty well. So if this blinks on, I'll reassemble it. I won't film the reassembling it since I'll film the disassembling of it, and then we'll turn it on and we'll see if it works. So appreciate your patience. Alright guys, so we got the grounds back in place. We got it, the power supply reinstalled, and I'll show you real quick. Let me flip the camera around. So there she is. She's installed. I'm not going to put the covers back on it yet. I just want to make sure everything is grounded, and then I'm going to test it. So I'm going to set this camera down real quick, and then I'm going to plug her up and see if she works. So, right there. Okay, well hopefully I don't start a fire, and hopefully she powers up. So I'm not expecting there to be too much of an issue. Okay, she's plugged up. Let's see if she powers on. We're getting a green light, and we're getting the logo. and we'll see if that capacitor pops. But it looks like we're getting a nice, good screen. So there we have it, guys. The issue with this particular TV, and it looks like it's probably a common issue, is a electrolytic capacitor issue. Replace it with good electrolytic capacitors, then you're good to go. So I might test the IOs and see if everything works okay. Let's see if the menu key works. Let's see. You might have to have something plugged up into it. Only effect for TV. Menu key's not doing anything. I might have to get the remote. You know, with some of these high definition TVs, you have to have the remote with it. So it's staying on. The capacitor, that's a 25 volt capacitor, is not swelling, and I'm actually surprised. Generally, if it's not the right voltage, especially if it's 10 volts off like that, we're going to have some issues with it. It generally would probably pop right away. So, okay, let's see. Now, I don't know if the mount itself is intact, because maybe I can just slap the mount into it. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like the mount's part of the TV. Okay, well, good thing is that it did come with the original remote, which OEM remotes are pretty much essential to have with a lot of these flat screen TVs. So I'm going to set it back up. Alright, let's look at it again. Alright, so there's the TV. That's her powering on. I am very surprised that the capacitor didn't blow right away. That is very surprising. I still don't trust it. I might play around with it and use it for a little while, but I'm pretty sure that that capacitor does need to be replaced. So now let's see if there is an input button on this remote. Man, this thing looks old compared to nowadays, I tell you. Okay. Let's see. Menu's not working. I wonder what input we're actually set on right now. There's volume. Volume works. Input. Okay, there's the input selector. Oh, so we're on the S video right now. Let's go to TV real quick. Let's get some white noise and see how it comes through. Oh, so it's not even going to give us the white noise. It's just going to give us a blue screen if it doesn't sense the signal. Okay. I wonder if it has a built-in digital receiver. Okay. Alright, now we can turn it to air mode. That's what we want, because that would be the antenna. Still no white noise. Okay. Well, there you go, guys. That looks like that did it, and it actually looks like a very stable image. We don't have any shaky graphics or anything like that. It looks really clear. The light looks really good, and I'm very happy, actually. I think I might use this as a secondary monitor, or I was actually thinking about flip around so I can talk to you. I was actually thinking about setting this up as a gaming TV for my shop here. I was actually planning on maybe mounting it. I'll turn it around again. Mounting the TV right here on this wall, and then people can actually sit down and play some old NES games. I was going to wire up maybe a wireless controller or something like that. But yeah, it looks good. Actually, I'm probably going to let it run for a little while, and if I get any update, if the capacitor blows, the 25 volt one, then I'll let you guys know. But besides that, I'm going to reassemble it. I might do some test footage of some games, and if that happens, then it'll be in this video. And I do appreciate you watching, and thank you very much. Alright, guys, so I got it all back together, as you can see, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to test out the NES on this TV and see how the EV works. So we got her all hooked up. I got my copy of JT02-37U1-000G. You can look at my previous videos to get an idea of that one right there. And we'll power on the TV. We'll switch the input to AV. I was going to test the HDMI ports today with my my Ouya, but apparently I didn't bring it into the shop today, so that kind of sucks. but we'll test out the standard AV in for now. Okay, gotta get used to this remote here. So, let's go over to AV. We'll set up an AV. Let's load up the old NES. Oh, right away, too. Didn't even have to blow into the car. And what I have too is I actually created a conversion cable. Well, it's not really a conversion cable, but a patch cable for the mono out on an NES, so I get simulated stereo by just taking one standard RCA cable and splitting it into two, so we can get that virtual stereo, if you will. It just makes the sound a little bit more full. It's still mono, but we get it through both speakers, so we don't feel like we're getting, one speaker out or something like that. This is awesome, guys. And now this is still running with that 25 volt capacitor, so I do have a 35 volt capacitor on order. And I do plan on replacing that as soon as it comes in, because I want stability. Over, okay, it's working, so that's good enough. You always want stability. Even though this is just, free TV, I will end up using this in the long run. Let's take a look at the options too for the zoom. Let's take a look. Oh, okay, that's just color. Okay. Cinema, sport, vivid, high bright. Okay. Vivid looks pretty good. Okay. You get pick size. I'm not going to give us the option for pick size. Let's see. Full, wide 1, wide 2, wide 3, 4.3, 16 by 9. Okay, so this is the standard scale of this input. So this is what the actual resolution. No, don't jump twice. So this is the natural resolution of the NES. You know what? Let me pull the camera out a little bit so you can actually see it, because it's probably boring seeing it far away, and you probably can't get all the color detail there. And I'll show you that patch cable real quick too. So here's the old NES. This one is not actually my NES. This is the client's that we replaced the 72 pin head on. And maybe once I get another one in, I'll actually show a tutorial of that. But there's probably tons of tutorials online for it. So here's a nice thick, solid core audio cable. It came out of just some RCA cables I had thrown in the back. And these two RCA outs came from some type of multi-audio video cable that was for some type of video capture card, but an old video capture card for a PC, and I don't even know what happened to the card, but I had the cables left over, so I decided to cut them and patch them into this, so that gives us that simulated stereo, so just mono coming through both left and right channel, and looks good. We're not getting any fuzzy images or anything like that. This is standard AV. I'm going to do some more testing through HDMI and component and all that, but it looks really good. So let me flip the camera around, and thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope this helps some people out there. I mean, it was kind of a standard video. Kind of already did the capacitor replacement before, but on the TV scale, it's kind of nice because I know a lot of people out there don't want to get rid of their old, their old flat screen TVs, and something like this, this is a good TV. I mean, this is not bad at all. You got 8 years on the unit, and all I had was just 6 swollen capacitors, and I mean, for an 8-year-old TV, the brightness, the screen, image quality is really, really good. So, I mean, it's this TV, if I cleaned it up and, trying to get some of this junk off of it, if I cleaned it up and got that actual 35 volt capacitor back in there, I mean, that'd be a $100 TV all day long. I know it's about $120 worth of work, but that's just what I would retail it at. But if I, since I do own it, I could probably sell it if I wanted to for $100 all day on Craigslist or something like that. For a professionally refurbished machine. Even though this one wasn't specifically professional in the sense of the way I went about doing things. If this was a client's TV, I would take a little bit more time with it. I would be more cautious, because really this is just kind of, I'm bored at my shop. It's a Saturday. Let's rip something apart. So. Alright guys, thanks again for watching, I appreciate it. I hope this did help some people out, and we'll see you soon.